How fast do you type?
103 words a minute. My mother made me take a typing course in the summer between 7th grade and 8th grade. I learned how to type on an IBM Selectric, and the typing teacher saw me looking at my hands, and so she typed a piece of typing paper on the top of it and put my hands under it, and so I learned to touch type because I couldn't look at my fingers, and the piece of paper was called a typing cloud.
A typing cloud?
A typing cloud.
The original cloud. Okay.
Oh, yes!
So I wanted to switch topics a little bit, because one of the things that I had sort of asked a little bit jokingly, but then you took on very, very seriously, was the meaning of life. What is the meaning of life? And you had said, oh my gosh, I really want to talk about this. This is what's motivated my change in profession. And
oh, I don't know if I said that.
I was sort of, well, it was close.
Okay.
I had originally just been expecting people to answer like 42 or something, you know, sort of a joke, but you actually really took that on seriously. Can you tell me a little bit more about what you think the meaning of life is, or why you're grappling with it more now, or how it's sort of guiding what you're doing next?
Well, I guess I am taking this seriously, aren't I? As an English professor, I thought about meaning a lot and talked about meaning a lot. In fact, one of the ways I approached what I was doing in teaching English is talking about with students about how meaning works. One of the basic things about meaning, as I understand it, is that when you've got meaning, you've got two things. You've got the thing in front of you, and then the thing that it means. And meaning is what happens between the two. What metaphor is something that takes you across space. I've been told that moving vans in Greece are called metaphoroi, because they take stuff from here to there. The way a metaphor works is the way figuration in general works, is the way language works, the way meaning works, is you've got a thing that you want to say over here, but you can't. You don't have the means to express that thing. But you do have this thing over here that can, under the right circumstances, get people from where you are now to where you want to be. Meaning is what happens between those 2 points. It seems to me that, as I understand meaning, life isn't one of the things that can have it. I don't think it stands for anything. And I think that there are people who would disagree. I think it's a very reasonable thing to say, actually, what we do here stands in a relationship of meaning to something that happens hereafter. Or what we do here is a kind of series of figures and symbols for an ulterior reality, whether one that happens later or on a different plane of existence. I think these are normal things to think. I'm not sure that right now I think those things, though. I'm not sure that the daily experience that I have corresponds to anything. So I don't know if this, I'm taking this question absurdly seriously, and I'm aware of this. One of the things that makes education appealing, at least it did for me, is that you always know what's next. So in kindergarten, first grade is next. And in second grade, third grade is next. And in high school, for more and more people in America, college is next. And for more and more people in college in America, grad school is next. And then for me, in the kind of program I went to, you're in grad school, okay, there's coursework, and then the orals is next. After orals, the dissertation is next. And then after the dissertation, the job market is next. And after the job market, a job is next if you are very lucky and unusual. Then after the job market, pre-tenure review is next, and then after pre-tenure review, tenure review is next, and then after that, there's promotion from associate professor to full professor, and by that point, that is so far in the future that you don't really have to think about what happens after that.
And when you say a job, you mean specifically that you will become a professor at an academic institution. You don't mean you will go on into publishing.
In a program of the kind that I went to, at least when I was there, it wasn't really conceivable that you could do anything other than get a tenure-track job at an institution of higher learning and still be a viable human concern.
Oh no, okay.
I know one would ever have said that, and it's understandable. I mean, everyone there is an English professor. Why wouldn't you want to be an English professor? What else are they training you for? And so I did all of those things. And I was on the brink of doing the next one, which is going up for tenure. And then I started asking seriously the question, is this where I'm supposed to be? And as you know, the answer I got to after taking a lot of counsel and asking a lot of very wise people what they thought, and after having had a wonderful experience for 10 years teaching English, the answer I got to was I ought to do something else. So I decided to leave academia. Everything about this process has been astonishing. I have no frame of reference. I had no idea what to expect. And everything's been different and better. different from and better than how I expected it would be, though not unchallenging. So one of the things that I didn't expect is that as soon as I stepped off of the tenure track and out of the educational system, all of a sudden I had to think about the rest of my life as something I had to make choices about. I had never had that thought before. Ever since I can remember, the future has been mapped out for me, and then all of a sudden, the world is all before me, which is amazing and wonderful and such a blessing that I get to have this experience. But it also means that I have to ask questions like, well, how many years do I have left?
Ooh, okay.
Right?
Yes, big. Okay.
And so that's why I responded to that question the way I did. Because all of a sudden I feel as though I'm asking those freshman questions again.
But for real.
What's
your favorite quote? I know you have written down one, I think, by Pope. Is that right?
You think. From Pope's essay on man, all nature is but art unknown to thee, all chance direction which thou canst not see. Pope's essay on man, as you knew,
at one point,
is about how individual human beings relate to the rest of the universe.
Okay.
Modest little poem. And I should say the central article of faith of that poem is, whatever is right. Which is a hard thing to wrap your head around, because it appears as though a lot of things that we see in the world are most definitely not right. Mm-hmm. Bad things happen all the time. Mm-hmm. Preventable bad things. And so the poem tries to vindicate the notion that everything is as it must be, without minimizing or denying all of the sorrow and suffering that we see in the world. And so this one section of the poem, close to the end of the first book, it's trying to explain how it can be that we shouldn't struggle against reality. Why should we try and relax and take things as they are? And so Pope's narrator says, all nature is but art, which means art in its 18th century use and earlier doesn't just mean painting and sculpture. It means, in a broader sense, artifice, intentional craft, purposeful creation. So all nature, everything we think exists just at random, meaninglessly, the poem says. What we think is nature is actually intentionally created. But this is what makes that quotation my favorite. All nature is but art, Pope says, unknown to thee. So everything we think of as nature, as being meaningless and just there, is actually intentionally created, but in a way that we don't know. He goes on, all chance is direction. So things that we think are random are actually put there in order for a reason, but we can't see that. And the poem goes on in the next few lines to say, all chaos, order, though not understood, all partial evil, universal good. So at every turn, the poem insists that everything is consciously, intelligently, benevolently ordered and organized and arranged. But at the same time, that benevolent, artful order is one that we will never be able to understand. And that just, I think that's true. I think it's true. I believe it. When I read that, I think that's that feels like a true thing about the world. That feels like a thing that I want to believe. That feels like something I can have faith in. Because on the one hand, it preserves the confusion and difficulty and sorrow that life actually has in it for us. And on the other hand, insists that despite all that, there's an order and a purpose and a meaning in everything, but that we're just not constituted to understand.
Interesting. Mm-hmm. I don't know if I necessarily think that squares with your idea that there is no meaning to life, because it implies that there is some sort of secondary reality or truth order behind the everyday sort of chaos, rough and tumble.
Yeah, but I don't think the relationship is one of reference. I think that would be too easy. So I think that what Pope's poem is asking me to believe is that there is some sort of ulterior order that I'll never be able to understand. And because I'll never be able to understand it, I need to give up on the idea that there's some sort of code or relationship that I can determine between this world of appearances and the real reality which lies beneath it. A friend of mine, a guy named Martin, said a thing once that I think about a lot in this connection. Martin said, so have you ever seen the back of a piece of embroidery?
Mm-hmm.
So on the front, it's this beautiful thing. On the back, it's just this mess of threads, and it's just nonsense and ugly. And he said, so he had been told or read, we are on the wrong side of the embroidery. All we can see is the mess of crazy threads all over the place. And it gets worse because every now and then, this gigantic needle comes poking through, and we scatter and get terrified and panic. And so from our vantage point on the wrong side of the embroidery, we cannot possibly understand what is on the other side. We cannot possibly understand the design, the art, if you will. Because this crazy combination of threads, there is no way we could infer from this craziness to the beautiful pattern on the other side. Just not how that relationship works. And so our only task, Martin said, in living is to give up on trying to puzzle out the crazy patchwork of threads and just trust that on the other side it makes sense. And that when that gigantic needle comes poking through, all we have to do is just poke it back. And trust that everything's going to work out.